Thank you all. As you see from our agenda, today is really a day built around this topic of supplier diversity with a real industry focus. We welcome all of our academic friends, but we're gonna get into the weeds, as it were, today around supplier diversity for industry, for supply chains, and the challenges, the roadblocks, the risks, the opportunities, the business case. We're going to touch on all of those really critical topics and go through it with real specialists. And I couldn't think of a better person really to kick off this event today than Kevin Nelson. Kevin is the Senior Vice President and Chief Procurement Officer for Becton Dickinson. Kevin has been in the pharma world for over 20 years, but most importantly, it's all been in supply chain. And he's been with BD for 12 or 13 years. And more than anything, Kevin and I are working on some projects around supplier diversity and Kevin's a real evangelist for supplier diversity. And so it's really an honor today to introduce to you Kevin Nelson and have him kick off this conference. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you. Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll get started while we pull the slides here. So Becton Dickinson, a company that's been around for about 125 years and been dealing with medical devices the whole time. John asked me earlier about how are things going, and I think the response is, you know, it's been chaotic. It's been crazy. There's been so much happening in supply chain over the past 2 years, and more happening all the time. So we have a huge opportunity now, as we're going to go into here in a little bit. We chose not to just focus on staying in business and supply continuity issues, but making sure that we had a number of these initiatives really continue to move forward as well. So I'm really excited to talk to you about our update today. And certainly if you have any questions, feel free to jump in. So there we go. Our program around supplier diversity, it's been one that we've really been pivoting here recently. It started out like a lot of different functions do as really kind of a metric and a number, one that people were looking at to say, great, can you spend more with diverse suppliers around the nation? And we decided to really take a pivot here a few years ago, move into more of an economic impact. And I think the benefit here is that we're really trying to do more than just hit a number, and we're trying to maximize our opportunities to really identify, educate, develop our suppliers. And that's the key thing here. Our impact is really looking at how we can help the suppliers become more financially stable, how we can develop a stronger economic environment, make a societal impact, create better well-being in their communities. And by that, we're really trying to encourage, you know, supplier spend, diverse and small business in different regions where our customers are as well. They're going to hire people from their community. They're going to have healthcare for them, really making an impact that I think is significant around the globe here, especially focused on the US for now. And then really looking at the economies with our customers, patients, and communities that we serve. Our focus is really looking at by focusing on the head, the heart, and the hands. We've really tried hard to get away from this is a metric and a number. It's something that we feel strongly about, we believe in. It's been a real nice movement for our company as well. So moving to the next slide here, let me give you a little bit of information on kind of our journey. Our journey began in 2004, where again, like many companies, we identified the need to have supplier diversity on small businesses. And we started out with really that number. And what can we do to try to encourage that behavior? It was about 10 years later, 2014, that we hired the first time full-time associate. And her job, and she's actually here on the call today as well, her job was to set up the program, be dedicated to it, focus on it. And I've spent a lot of time with Jessica, and you know, we talked about what do we need to do differently, because it's not a one-person show. She did a great job of growing the program, getting procurement to really focus on this more seriously, but it was still an individual and a function that was driving it. And we knew we needed to shift and pivot significantly. So as we look forward at our roadmap here, these are meaningful changes that we're trying to drive today. that really aren't just looking at a few modest tweaks, but really truly embedding this into the company and into the DNA. So as we look and start here, governance is the key thing. We stepped back and had meetings with our executive leadership team, as well as with our CEO and chairman, and made sure that they were on board. The word sharing.
Yeah, we're just having a little difficulty. Your voice is coming through great, but the slides are not advancing in the for the folks that are remote. So we're just going to try to get that.
Okay,
Sorry, Kevin.
because it was a great slide that we were on.
Great slide. We'll go back to your great slides.
All right. Okay, so right now you should be seeing kind of this timeline of the roadmap here. So really, we started with the governance and partnering with our chairman and CEO to make sure that this was part of what the company really needed and wanted to focus on. And he was very optimistic, very positive around trying to do this and do it right. So we've had a lot of opportunity with him in terms of how to really drive this program forward. As we look forward into FY 23, 24, and 25, it's really going to be how can we continue to grow and advance it, getting into the tier 2 spend, trying to develop those suppliers as well to really be able to do more. We are hoping to make this a global program. Today it's focused on the US and North America. How do we take this globally? And I think that's a lot of the appetite from not only us, but our customers and patients around the world as well. And then creating this path to certification. Ultimately, it's going to be the influence. How do we influence the behavior internally? Today, I will admit that I think that we are still doing more chasing than we want to, and that people are kind of falling back and finding the same suppliers that they always have because it's easy. They know who they are. They worked with them for 20 years, and it's the easy way out. And we're trying to make sure that they have, our stakeholders have the visibility of the supply base that is able to come in with new technology, new innovation, and really drive the change that has been helpful. We've been able to really take a few of these then and share company-wide the benefits of that. And it's really gained momentum in terms of not just falling back to, again, your same consulting firm. So I think the groundswell is there and moving in a really good direction. So I'm excited about our roadmap. This takes funding, I think, is the other common comment that I'd make here. We've had great support around that. We could always use more, but I think as we get more people to do this internally, it's going to be the key. We've embedded it into our goals throughout the company and into different BUs as well. This can't be a procurement initiative or a supply chain initiative. It has to be company-wide led. So moving ahead here, let's see, I'll get it figured out. There we go. Hopefully you can see it on online as well. We advanced. So how are we doing? Right now, we have looked at significant progress over the years. This past year, we had about $565 million in spend with diverse suppliers and $1 billion with small businesses. So not bad, but not what we want. This is a journey that's going to be over many years. We have a lot of work to do as well. This is including around 2,700 suppliers that we have. Our focus is not on more or quantity, it's the quality. How can we develop that relationship where they can grow, they can hire more people in their community, they can provide more healthcare, and they can bring in really the innovation and expertise that we want them to bring in. Again, it's not how you can spend a PO with someone once a year, but how can you have them become part of your supply base that's the go-to supplier again and again. It's really been our focus here. So you can see the numbers, and I think we've had good progress in terms of kind of the different areas. There are a few buckets in the diverse spend that are low that we're focused on right now in terms of how do we develop them. So when we think about enablers are really what we're trying to do then to continue to grow this and advance this journey. So the enterprise alignment, I alluded to a little bit already. That is the key point in making sure the company is really focused on it and becomes part of what we do and what we embrace. Our CEO, our inclusion and diversity team, procurement, a lot of different functions out there really working hard, embracing this and moving with it. I think that's been the key benefit that we've had so far. What I like and what I'm excited about is our strategic sourcing strategies. We have strategies for all of our major categories. We've had them for years. These have historically been around cost, quality, supply continuity. We introduced a couple new concepts here recently. One is around supplier diversity, the other one being around sustainability. Every category now has to have that embedded in it, meaning what are we doing then to bring in and incorporate new diverse suppliers, new sustainability factors and ideas as well. And it's opened up a huge opportunity. A good strategy, as you're probably aware, is one that's developed with your stakeholder, with your business unit, where they approve it, they sign off, they then live with it and help implement it as well. That has been a huge opportunity to make sure that this is not procurement led only. So making great progress there coming in. From a technology standpoint, I think other companies have done this. We've talked to others out there, some that are in the audience today. We've developed technology that really allows us to buy from a marketplace that we've created. So in our tool, we call it Buy Smart. If you're looking to buy anything, you go into that tool. We have a marketplace of suppliers that are coded as small and diverse, and you're able to go in there and buy from them. They're approved, they have contracts, they have approved pricing, whatever it might be. So we really try to highlight them and take advantage of that as well. And that's really us kind of just making that available. The associates around the nation, even around the world, have really gravitated to that to say, you know what, maybe I don't want to buy from that large firm, that large corporation. I'm looking for someone that might be more small, diverse, have new innovative thoughts as well. And it's really exploded internally. It's really been exciting. From supplier development, we've been doing this now for a few years. We have a number of different suppliers that we've engaged with to really focus on how do we help them grow? How can they understand how to work with a company like Becton Dickinson, fairly complex company working globally around the world. And it's not easy to get involved, to submit an RFP or be able to quote on one. And we've really helped them in terms of how to manage and navigate that. We've helped give them access to funding and capital investments around the world as well. All things that I think are essential and critical in terms of their ability to really grow with our company and others as well. So the development is really rewarding. The feedback from these suppliers has been phenomenal. It hasn't just been, we're going to go through a worksheet and share, here are the updates and, good luck to you. These are really immersed type of programs that really come out with something meaningful. And then the external partnerships. Again, we're not doing this on our own. This is a partnership through many different functions and teams out there to make sure that we can partner, benchmark, work together on that. We need to work together to make sure that this is going to really happen and move forward. So as I look at kind of how we tackled this, we started here again a couple years ago and really kind of refocusing our efforts here. The big thing has been looking at it from an end-to-end perspective. And I think the exciting part here is that many companies will focus on the raw material piece up front, looking at your supply base. What can we try to do? We're getting a little echo here. Maybe if folks online you can go on mute. All right, let me try that again. Okay, so we'll pause there until we get some help.
In the meantime, if there are any questions, other than technical questions.
How's that? A little echo, I think.
Still echoing. Came suddenly, huh? Is there a volume control? Can maybe just tone down?
Seems like it started to stop.
Seem better now, right?
Is it better now?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's try it. Maybe someone's on mute or something. So anyway, when we go back to kind of the end-to-end supply chain here, that was really our focus, making sure that we weren't just focused on the upfront suppliers, that were focused on, bringing in new indirect or direct spend. The concept that we've adopted is really looking at the entire supply chain from beginning to end. And we're taking a little bit of a reverse approach here. Starting with our customer, we deal with hospitals all over the US and all over the world, and talking with them about, what are you looking to do? What's important to you? And it's been overwhelming. Hospitals are very, I think, progressive in terms of their want and desire to drive this. And they've been really vocal in terms of what is BD doing to help encourage diverse spend and economic impact in their communities. So again, great for us to be having spend with diverse suppliers, but is it really representative of our patient base? So if you go to a large IDN that might be here in New Jersey or somewhere around the world, are we really working in that community to help identify suppliers and develop that economy where their patients are living and residing? And that partnership with a few of the large IDNs has been phenomenal. So kind of working back from there, we have the understanding of what we want to do and what our patients are wanting. We work all the way through to make sure that in our warehouses, we have 3PLs that understand our mission. We have a associate base that is diverse as well. We take it through logistics, sterilization, manufacturing. Manufacturing in our plants, we have 65,000 employees. You know, we have diverse hiring standards, and really looking at the suppliers around these different locations, if we can, you know, encourage that small and diverse supplier there as well. And then clearly the raw material suppliers up front, which includes going into new product development, finding those suppliers who can really help us with a new technology to develop the next therapeutic, the next product that could advance healthcare. That's where a lot of the development starts, because we have to, and many times we can't find that supplier, so we want to work with them to develop their capabilities as well. But this has really gained a lot of traction. I think it's been very exciting. So some of the customers here that we've been working with, are really excited about the partnership that we've formed already. If you look at kind of a spectrum here, going from left to right, the very left-hand side is really suppliers that every day are submitting RFPs to us. And they're saying that we want to understand, what is BD doing on supplier diversity? And we reply back to them with a whole host of information and updates. We really didn't think that that was very meaningful other than checking a box. So we started to talk to them about, you know, can we understand what you're trying to do and what you want to do here? And from there, we kind of start to go to the right-hand side, where we worked with them to develop goals, metrics, and focus areas in their community that we could really strive for. So you see some pretty large IDNs that are around the world here, and they've got a great sense of purpose. You know, how can they help cure different chronic diseases, but also how can they help their community? So this is where we want to partner. This has been very fulfilling, very satisfying as well. And then on the far right-hand side again, is really how do we work with these different, some customers and some different NGOs and peer councils to really continue this momentum as well. I think it's an opportunity to really transform healthcare supply chain by looking at the very end-to-end structure that we have today, as opposed to just kind of dabbling up front and hoping the rest, you know, plays out accordingly. So this is gaining a lot of momentum. I presented this to Washington here a couple of weeks ago. We have a lot of interest from the Secretary of Commerce, from the supply chain team, and they think it's great. They want to know how they can help. So again, this is not BD driving it. It's really how we can get more people on board. So I look at ideas, innovation for the future. We're going to do more of what we've been doing and also introduce new thoughts and ideas as well. The marketplace within a marketplace, I think is fantastic. We're going to continue to grow that out and build it. Crowdsourcing, we've launched a couple of these already. And again, I think other folks in here have a tool that they've used. We've done a couple. It's been really interesting. You can go out and not just through an RFI type of process, communicate with a few suppliers. You can really throw out an idea or concept to hundreds or thousands of different suppliers and say, give us your thoughts on this topic, on this technology, on this material. And the input has been phenomenal. So we've been really excited about what that can potentially unleash. We're focused on innovation, and innovation comes from many, many different areas and places that you have no idea, including academia. That's been a big part of it. So how we can partner through crowdsourcing is really a way to unlock that talent. So the focus is going to be on meeting these unmet needs that we have in the company that we aren't even aware yet. And a lot of times you find that in a small company who might be working on something that is not in a journal yet, not available, not for public consumption, and you stumble across it, and it turns out to be the next therapy that is, you know, can change lives as well. So that's an area that we're really going to focus on. Technology developments. This is where we continue to partner and develop our suppliers in terms of, do they need capital? Do they need help growing and evolving? Technology today can be very expensive. How can we partner? How can we work together? So that'll be a focus for us. And then finally, really collaborating with our large strategic suppliers. A lot of these have programs that are even more advanced than ours. And I think that's really exciting. How can we then look at that end-to-end supply chain pull them in to really help create even a more robust program from beginning to end. And then the last but not least here is really embedding this in our DNA. As I mentioned before, we're still doing more chasing than I want. We want this to be just part of who we are and the natural thinking all the time. But we know that we have to provide that to people so it's available for them, so they don't have to search for it. If you have to search for it, we're not gonna win. So that's really kind of the information I have. We have a video too that I'm going to share here, and it's a video that was done by a diverse supplier that we have. Really kind of shares the journey. We've been doing a number of these with this supplier. It's been really.
BD isn't an island. We play an important part in thousands of communities around the world, including yours. That's why we support small businesses and diverse suppliers to empower and grow the places where we do business. It's why we prefer vendors who share our commitment to sustainable practices to protect the health of hometowns everywhere. Now, after 17 years of investments in supplier diversity.
Sorry about that. The animation's not working, so let me try it once more. We'll see if it works here.
BD isn't an island. We play an important part in thousands of communities around the world, including yours. That's why we support small businesses and diverse suppliers to empower and grow the places where we do business. It's why we prefer vendors who share our commitment to sustainable practices to protect the health of hometowns everywhere. Now, after 17 years of investments in supplier diversity, we're aiming even higher to create a program that will strengthen not just supply chains around the world, but communities around the world. At BD, we do what's right.
Great, thank you. So really the reason I want to share that is, we've been partnering with this company now for a while. We try to do different videos on LinkedIn, trying to really enhance our program, what we're trying to do, what we're trying to accomplish. So it's gained a lot of interest. We have a lot of companies that want to partner, want to know how they can get involved, which is great. And I think we have a long way to go, but the journey is just beginning. So very happy to be able to share this with you today. Happy to answer any questions you may have as well.
Hi, my name is Edita, and I work for Integrated Resources. We're a tier 2 supplier of Becton Dickinson.
Great.
So thank you. The question that I have, and I see this in a lot of supplier diversity programs, I've really loved this development of putting a lot of thought into how to grow what you can actually get, the value that you can receive from diverse suppliers, of which are right. So, I noticed that there's a stumbling block to something that I think hasn't been explored. And that is when the sourcing department is looking to purchase, they go out with an idea in mind and the specific thing that they're wanting to purchase. And when you're crowdsourcing, there are specific questions that you ask. So there's a whole lot of innovation that your sourcing team isn't exposed to, because there isn't necessarily some sort of way for suppliers to come to the company. So let's say, for example, we sell a service, an enhancement on something that you already buy, whatever it is. But you're not looking for it because you don't know it exists. What would you suggest? What's a good way to tell our customers, hey, maybe have a supplier diversity day, or give us some sort of avenue, even if it's a small window, to present to your team, maybe annually or once every 2 years or something. And not just Becton Dickinson, but other companies like Becton Dickinson. What do you think would be a good way to kind of introduce them to the idea that there's innovation out there that you're not even know?
Thank you. So the question, I don't know if everyone could hear it online. The question is really, how do you encourage a sourcing department to be open to more innovation, more thoughts? Because a lot of times we'll send an RFP and say, I want answers to the numbers 1, 2, and 3, nothing else, right? And we've seen it time and time again where our function too, and I think it's cultural, that we had tried to follow a process to say, we're trying to buy a widget and I want the exact specification, tell me who can provide the right product here. As we've engaged the crowdsourcing element, we're trying to keep it very open-ended, because the whole idea behind that is that we don't know what we want. We may want a new technology around graphene, but we don't know what the application might be or exactly how it can be used. So keeping it more generic and general is what we tried to do in crowdsourcing to make sure that allows, different suppliers to say, you have a whole new technology and a whole new need. So we're trying to open up the aperture, if you will, to try to do that. I love the idea about kind of the supplier days as well. I think as we hopefully are getting out of the COVID area, I think it's going to allow us to bring more suppliers in to really be able to demonstrate, more of that technology and innovation too. So I think that's a great opportunity for us to be able to build on, and certainly others too.
Kevin, there was a question online that I think may tie in a little bit. The question was, what do small suppliers really gain from sharing ideas through crowdsourcing?
So, ultimately it's going to lead to business, I guess would be the concept and idea. So again, if I use the same idea before around graphene, there's a new technology that might be a disruptive technology to lithium batteries and things. So for those suppliers who can offer that they may have a technology or a process that can do something different, more efficiently, more economically, whatever it might be, that's an idea that you want them to bring forward. Now, we don't want to take the idea and say, thank you for that. We're going to go now and create our own IP around it. So you're obviously coming in with this idea, technology that you have, and we want to then have the conversation. It's very important then we have the right NDAs as well to make sure that, there's none of the stealing of an idea. If you have the idea and process, how do we then work together on that? Do you have the patent? Do you have the IP on that? So yeah, it's not just trying to solicit your idea and run with it either. Great question.
Great presentation. As a former CPO myself, I worked for Johnson & Johnson for medical devices. So I am very, very close to the space that you are in.
Yeah.
That's supply diversity as part of our corporation, and tremendous work you're doing. The journey is very similar, very similar. We started in 1995, but we approached it almost identical to what you're doing.
Yeah.
But as I was able to retire now, I am a part of a minority-owned company, right? So I lead a company that's in the space of in healthcare, compliance, validation, equipment qualification. That type
We
of
should
stuff.
definitely talk then.
But I'm curious your thoughts on what has surprised you, right? Because as I got into it, I had CEO support, but when you get down to the company group chairman, the structure of J&J, and then also the presidents, they weren't as enlightened, right? So it was becoming an internal selling, and I sold as part of my career. So, but the difficulty, it was almost externally, the demand was, I'm on a board of a hospital system, and it's exactly what you're saying. It's needed that big corporations do what BD is doing. So such an applause to you. But I'm curious on two things. What has surprised you from a delight standpoint, and what has also said this is a lot more challenging than I expected?
So first comment is that we work with Linda Candia all the time.
Oh yeah,
we've really kind of formed our program a lot off of J&J as well. So that's where I talked about before, where let's not go create our own very unique type of thing. How can we learn from others? So there's this group of, I think, 8 different companies that are working on the New Jersey programs, and that we're learning from each other, and J&J has a great program as well. So when you think about how to do that different, what have I learned, and what are we seeing that's been a little more challenging? I think it has been the easy meeting was sitting down with the chairman and saying, hey, this is something we want to really pursue. And they're going to nod their head and just say, I completely agree, love it, go make it happen. You're 100% right. You start to go down a few levels and people are like, listen, I'm just trying to get my equipment validated. I'm trying to get this product on the market and everything. So therein lies the challenge. This is a constant selling role in procurement and supplier diversity in terms of explaining the value, the benefit. We've then worked and partnered with HR in terms of how do we incorporate this into the goals and bonus structure as well. That's going to drive behavior. You don't want to have to do it. You want people to think that it's the right thing to do, which a lot of people are, but having some goals as well certainly helps drive it. And then I think each BU has now embraced it, where it's become a bit of a competition where we have 9 business units around the world, and they're focused on it, and they have it on their dashboards that we review monthly in the management team meeting, and they're showing the ESG, the diversity, and really how they're doing. And there's no better way than competition sometimes to really make this work as well. We're still not there when you get down to lower level engineering. where it's just like, listen, I just have to get this product out the door, right? So we have some work to do there, but it's a constant journey. Thank you.
Excellent presentation. My name is Mong Min, and I'm in academia, and I'm also a part-time faculty at Rutgers. You opened up a lot of things, but I'd like to focus on just a couple. You talked about, sir, about buy-in. So I used to work for a large pharmaceutical company, and in the area of sustainability, we had similar issues as well.
Mhm.
It's a matter of buy-in, and exactly how you said, we get the nod from C-suite, and it goes down, and when it comes to the middle level, that's really where things don't happen or can happen. That's really where you're either successful or not.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we did there was, with a lot of the goals that were established, we had those individuals take ownership on meeting those goals. A simple example would be if it's energy management, very simple, right?
Mhm.
So that the energy managers do that. So if you include some of the goals associated with their performance connection or targets for the year, then it seems to work better.
Great idea.
On the diversity part, you mentioned about potentially expanding globally. So perhaps a challenge would be the definition of diversity itself. We're very clear in terms of diversity definition in the US, in Germany or elsewhere.
I think you're completely right, and that's probably why we haven't embarked on it yet. I think we're still trying to figure out what does this mean in different countries. So part of that is working with our peers in terms of what's the right definition, where do we go. But I love your idea too about kind of that connection internally. We have these associate resource groups, and we've asked them to really help drive it as well. So now we have this ground surge of more people driving it all around. I've gone over, I'm sure.
No, you're fine. And thanks for this is what this is all about. I do want to get to some of the questions that have come in online, so I thought I'd get close to the mic here. And there's some interesting ones here. Keep in mind, this will be followed by a panel who will also speak to their individual journeys, and you'll see a lot of consistent themes, but there'll be but as well, everyone's journey is a little different. So there was a question, Kevin, that gets into the supply base, and I think these are interesting questions. First, what visibility do you have in terms of tier 2 and tier 3 suppliers? And how do you keep those tier 1 suppliers motivated to drive this passion down the supply chain? Yeah. How's that experience been going?
I think from a tier 1, that's where we have to look at quality over quantity. Really the ones that we have engaged there, how can it really help them continue to engage and do more valuable work internally? That'll be the focus there. So I think that's how we're going to handle that. Tier 2, we have different tools now that we really use to try to map our supply base, where we may not know tier 2, 3, 4 suppliers out there, and we want to understand who they are. We want to help design that architecture, that supply base as well. This mapping tool gives us that visibility if we don't happen to know it. And now we can have a say in terms of who our suppliers are using as well. They too oftentimes are just speed to market. We're going to use the corner equipment supplier down the street because we've used them for 20 years. When we have our QBRs with them, we really try to engage in terms of who are they buying from, how are they doing it, how are they kind of taking our vision and taking it further as well. So there's more work there, but that's our vision and drive.
And do you have specific measures, pain or gain measures for your tier 1 suppliers in terms of contractual measures in terms of how they would drive diversity down to the tier 2 or 3?
We don't yet, but that's where we're going with our contracts. I mentioned the strategies a little bit before about embedding this into the strategies on ESG and diversity. That now is going to be implemented into these contracts as well. The strategic supply base that we have, we've talked to them about it. They're fine. They said, we already do this, we already embrace it. We want to make sure it's contractually bound and we can look at it, review it in a QBR.
Great. Interesting question here. By developing suppliers, you improve the supplier's market power and capacity. Is that a concern? in terms of them working with competing businesses at BD?
No, if it's a concern, we could even talk about exclusive contracts as well. Meaning that we may not want them to work with J&J, who has a competing product, and therefore, can we negotiate some sort of exclusivity there as well? But oftentimes it's, how do they grow, do more? It's going to make them more successful, bring a new technology as well. So we don't oftentimes get into that.
And then we'll take this, I think this last question from online, and if there's any others, please. As we sit here today, as we sat out there this morning and you shared with me some of your today's challenges, the question is, what are the present challenges, especially when trying to patch in a disrupted supply chain due to all these current disruptions that we have, be they pandemic related, war related, oil related, and the like. Maybe it's a question of priorities. How do you do it?
Yeah.
How does someone at your level actually manage all that?
I think that's what I alluded to early on, in that we were consumed like everyone in terms of just staying in business, and there's disruptions every day. I mean, if I look, we may have 600 different suppliers that are having a problem delivering product today, and that's all consuming. We chose purposely not to put this and other things on the back burner and wait till it got back to normal, because unfortunately, I'm not sure if it's going to go back to normal. So we really chose that. We have to be purposeful here, keep these initiatives out there. We have a team that's focused on it, and then more folks that can also do it. We've reorged a little bit. We're doing another one here next week that's going to carve people out so they aren't only doing supply disruption work. They can focus on strategy as well. And that's how we're trying to drive it.
Yes, I've actually heard that answered many times with WeBank members, NMSDC, and Diversity Alliance for Science. And it seems that it's a common misconception that a small supplier is less able to function in the face of challenges. But what actually happens is a lot of these larger corporations, through their diverse suppliers who are able to turn on a dime, were able to get things done much faster and more efficiently. And the pandemic and the challenges of our current marketplace was what proved it. So I think what we need to change in this case, I'm sorry to jump in to answer your question, but we need to change our mindset.
It is a paradigm shift. You're absolutely right.
Really enlightening, and we look at a lot of data, and we have not seen our smaller or diverse suppliers struggle to deliver product or services during the pandemic. We have seen, tier ones, bigger suppliers that have had multiple issues, and maybe it's due to their complexity, or maybe they've bitten off more than they can chew. But we've been pleasantly surprised too that, they're chugging right along. There have been, when pandemic initially hit and we had wages spike and everything else, there were small suppliers, not diverse, not anything, but just smaller suppliers that were struggling with kind of access to capital. And that was where we mentored and talked about how we can work together, what we can suggest. And now we changed payment terms, we did whatever we needed to, but that was really it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
Hi, thank you. Great presentation. Lou Seppi from J&J. I had a question, understanding how important supplier diversity is to us as well. But just curious, within a category or subcategory, have you found any geographic concentrations within diverse suppliers that might impact your risk modeling? Because I'm sure, like us, we're balancing a lot of different aspects of our business and risks. I'm sure it's on top of your mind as well. Are you finding any cohorts that you're able to identify that impacts the risk profile that you may have on the table versus some of the, other suppliers?
A little bit, we look at our risk profile, looks at, I think, 13 different criteria, and it's your financial strength, your location, all these different criteria. And that's going to come out the score. That score is what we then want to look at to see, is there something in there that would prohibit us or do something differently in the contract that we need to consider. But it hasn't a whole lot. I don't know if it's a leading question you have based on what you've seen, but we haven't seen a whole lot of, concern or disruption there.
I'm always looking for causals that might impact.
Yeah, no, it's a valid point.
Is et cetera.
Valid point.
And then I had another question. I loved your slide, taking the supply chain from raw materials through logistics, ultimately to the customer. And I think your program is marvelous. Does it vary in the way that you communicate with your suppliers, whether it's direct or indirect spend?
Yeah, yeah.
So is there a different playbook that you use?
Yeah, I think it does. So the category strategies that we create vary. Indirect, I think it's a more common practice for diverse and small supplier spend. I think many more are familiar with it. The direct side, especially when you get into NPD, new product development, it's very rare. It's quite unique. And so that's a whole different kind of training module that we have the category managers do as they partner with that engineer who says, you know what, I've used Tyvek for 50 years. I'm not going to a new little converter out there. It's too risky for me. So it's been a different playbook. But again, it's moving in the right direction.
Thank you.
Yep. Question.
Hi, Kevin. Great to meet you again. My name is Sean Zhang. I'm the second year MBA student at Rutgers Business School.
Good to see you.
I was also the student program manager for the NJ Supplier Diversity Program sponsored by NJ Governor's Office in collaboration with 8 NJ leading companies. And
You did a great job, by the way.
Thank you. And in class, actually, I have learned a lot of great examples from Professor Warren Cohen, when he mentioned how BD helps supplier to build the financial stability, to build the resilience in the supply chain. And in the program, I realized that there are different maturity of the companies. Some companies, they are seeking for the expansion with various diverse businesses of different scale. But for some companies, they just focus on the rationalization of their existing suppliers to develop a strategic partners. And my question is, for those companies, because we got a very limited time window, some small business have already gone out of business last year. So for those companies focusing on their existing supplier resources, what's your suggestion to let the new small size suppliers to come to their radar? And this is why I highlighted the voice from Yukita in our board meeting to have a diversity day for all those companies.
Which is a great idea. I think the access for these small suppliers to companies like ours still is the biggest roadblock. Sending an email honestly doesn't work that well. The old-fashioned cold call doesn't work that well. So how can they make themselves known to us? If they're waiting for us to call them, it's probably not going to happen for all the reasons we talked about earlier, that our engineer has no willingness or desire to. So how do we really kind of make this matchmaking program? Could be the on-site work, could be different councils and that too. That's where I need help. So I don't think we've solved it. We would love to talk with more about how can we collectively kind of do that. I think the NJ Council work is great because we're now able to see other suppliers that J&J and others are using that we had no idea. And these are suppliers that, they may have used for 5-10 years, do a great job, great product, great service. And we can say, excellent, bring them in, as fast as we can here. But there's thousands more that are out there that don't have that opportunity. So that still is an unmet need that I haven't figured out yet. Great point. You can help us on that too, though, sure. All right. Thank you. Good. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. That was a great presentation. So my name is Ying Tao. I'm assistant professor from Penn State University Barron Business School. And I'm also chairing the DEI committee for our business school. So this is a really highly relevant topic. So I have a question relevant to the COVID. 2 questions actually. So my first question is, I think before the pandemic, many companies are more outsourcing from overseas, and after the pandemic, they shifted to this nearshoring or sourcing within the U.S. So is that the case for BND, and naturally creates the more challenges in the supplier diversity because naturally when you source overseas, those suppliers are naturally traditional defined underrepresented groups or diversity. And another question is, so people all think that after the pandemic, because of all those transitions of the life, job, working styles and all those necessary accommodations required, so people's mindset have changed to requirement and towards a more strategic, inclusive supply chain management. So I'm wondering, have you observed this culture change in your company that people seems to be more inclusive and desire more, equity, inclusive working environment, so that benefits this.
Yeah. There's a lot there, right? We could have a whole other hour session on kind of that continuity and the nearshoring and that. So yeah,
What happens when faculty ask questions? It's never-
we absolutely jumped into that. The nearshoring, the regional sourcing is a huge area that we're doing right now. And, our supply chain, like many others, was built 20, 30, 40 years ago based on, low cost global suppliers. Now to have that same container show up with any variability is the question, and it's going to cost a lot of money. So that model isn't that good for us today. So we have nearshored a lot. We have regionally sourced a lot as well. And as a result, we are seeing a resurgence of these suppliers that are local who can be part of that, because we're not going to use that one that was over in maybe Greater Asia, but someone that's here. So again, we've got a lead here on someone that can help from an equipment standpoint, that can be local and everything too. That's great. So I think then that has built, more interest internally. When I talk to our customers, so I've been on 65 customer visits, and I had one yesterday, have one Monday again. It's been exciting, but talk about getting attacked when you come in and the customers are like, where's our blood collection tube? Where's our, diagnostic device? They are all extremely focused on, are you manufacturing in and around the US? We want it to be here. We can't depend on, product coming in from a different part of the world where you read about a different challenge happening every day, right? So we're working. We've been a little bit ahead of the game there. We've moved a lot to more of a regional standpoint, but the customers are like, you're going to win tenders in business knowing that your supply chain is close in this area, as opposed to someone who is still very dependent on a different part of the world. So I don't know if that even gets close to answer your question, but great, thank you. All right.
All right. Thank you, Kevin. Great job. We're going to segue here to a panel, which I'm going to host, and I'll introduce in a minute. But I think there's some themes here that are going to continue through the day. And one of them I just wanted to point out, and Kevin really articulated it well. On all these journeys, we see these internal and external stakeholder pressure points, right? For a lot of businesses, perhaps this is not in the DNA or the culture of the business on day one. But it's because of these external pressure that the business then realizes that there's a true business case, true economic business case associated with this. And I think that's, when we talk about some of the traditional procurement trends of centralization and clout and buying power, this kind of runs amok of that perhaps. But there's this enormous business case that comes when you start looking at your customer base and extending that through to all of your shareholders and the like. And I think that theme we'll try to continue today to see how that plays out amongst the speakers and the panelists. All right, thanks again, Kevin. Yeah, pleasure. Thank you.